I did an interview with Keith Haring, who was the first very famous graffiti artist in New York City shortly after he died. Now, I didn't know much about Keith, except I did know his art, which is amazing and really is a universal symbol, language and symbols. So let me see what Keith wanted to say. Keith begins. I tried to distill the very best of human experience in my art. And as you know, I lived where people did not have very good lives. They were very species oriented, but it was a lot more of the base or aggressive nature of humans in my neighborhood. That's what was all around me. And even so, I tried to express my art in a better essence of human experience. Communication was really an important issue for me. I observed the phenomenon of how people communicated with each other, whether it was in anger or frustration or lust, or any of the varieties of ways people communicate, even going into a small grocery store and getting to know the clerk. There was a lot more of that in New York City than you would ever imagine. The people in cities are interested in people. And actually, on the neighborhood level, they are much more intensely involved with each other than you would ever guess from their lifestyle. In the city, there was a lot of communication going on. Their days were just interacting with people from the instant they got up until the instant they go to sleep. Sometimes people are so interested in doing this, they don't even sleep. So there was a lot of human species interaction in the city. This is one of the things I was trying to convey in my art, how people were interested in each other. And even though the exchange, the interaction took place sometimes as violence and aggressiveness, that's part of human nature. And it was expressed between people. I was on the street a lot as a kid. I mean, I couldn't be in my home. There wasn't actually enough room, particularly with my lifestyle. I tended to go to public places as a child. That's where I lived and functioned. So, of course, I tended to stay there as a young adult. I asked Keith, when did you realize you were so gifted? When did you realize that you could see in ways other than other people saw? He answers, I always drew and sketched. He said it was quite natural for him to combine the drawing that he did as a child in public places. If you remember, graffiti as a phenomenon was just getting started when I was a kid. There had always been the usual swear word up on the bathroom walls, but it really didn't become a phenomenon until the 70s. I mean, it started in Haight-Ashbury in the late 60s, but it was a phenomenon throughout New York City by the late 70s. I was always oriented to the street, toward people in movement, people in public. If you noticed, I never did much in terms of home in that orientation. I was really interested in the way people express themselves in public, and that's what I portrayed in my art. I didn't think of it as work. I didn't take myself seriously as an artist. I never felt like I was in an ivory tower. I never even labeled myself as an artist. It was just something I did. It was really interesting when it turned out that I could make a living doing this, and the recognition of other people, well, they were just recognizing themselves in my art, and that was the great appeal of my work. Everything saw something of themselves in my work, something in their life, something they'd already felt or seen, and I distilled their experience, but they still could recognize it. And that's why my work was so popular. It was from the populace, so everybody recognized it. It was an interesting transition. There were a lot of people around me that wanted me to think of myself as something special. They thought I was special. But as I was always too busy doing things to stop and think why I was doing it. I was just doing it. I comment, Keith, you're in really good shape here in the afterlife, well healed for only having been deceased for a few weeks now. I wasn't even sure if you'd be willing to talk yet. And he said, no, I'm always interested to talk to anyone. And he spent a little time commenting on where I lived in New Hampshire. He said, you're fairly isolated out there, aren't you? and out of touch with many things that are going on. And you can't do as much out here. So it was funny because he looked around at where I lived and it clearly held no appeal for him. But Keith continues, I'm bitterly disappointed to be out of my body at this point. There was so much I wanted to do. I could have seen myself evolving my art, and it definitely would have changed. It would have changed form. I would have loved to gone into film and do cartooning. That would have been the logical way to go. I would have loved to have gotten older and work with different material. And even though I had done a few sculptures, I was so mobile at that stage in my life. I wasn't settled anywhere to work with materials, but I would have loved to have kept working with electronic visuals of my designs. I could have seen doing a cartoon series to teach children about the reality of their humanness, for want of a better word, to teach them good things, to care about others. I think we've gotten so far away from that in our society. I would have loved to have done some children's books, and my work for and with children, I wanted to continue. I was still working with my peer group when I died. So it really is an extreme disappointment to be out of body. This virus, and he means AIDS, is a trickster. It is very evil because it is wasting the potential of many people's lives. It is a tremendous evil that has been brought down upon the people. Everyone should have a chance to be in a body and not be in a body as long as they wanted or needed to. And just because the junkies are dying of AIDS, we should not say that they deserve to die, that they didn't count. We shouldn't hold the very talented artists up and say, isn't it a shame that these few people had to die? It is a shame that anybody had to die young. And this is going to have a very demoralizing effect on people. They're going to have to think about life as having no value, because if they think about life as having value and then see all this senseless waste of lives, waste of people's time and life, they're just not going to be able to cope with it. What this disease is going to do is to lead to an incredible devaluation of the importance of the time and physical as being so precious and so special and such a gift. Few people are going to understand what a gift life is because they can't think that way. They can't think of life as a gift and see all their friends dying. You see what I mean? It just doesn't go together in the human psyche. So the people who live, who survive this plague, are going to be devastated morally. Not just the guilt and the grief is going to disrupt their function in life, but they're going to wonder what life is for anyway if everybody they know is dying. Why think of life as anything great? I mean, you can't have it both ways. It's like holding two opposite thoughts at the same time. And so this plague is going to have devastating moral repercussions. It already has. And I know you're not as affected by it in New Hampshire. And I told Keith, but my own brother, my genius brother, is HIV positive. He survived quite well and is on medication and is actually older than I am right now. So Keith continues, the evil that was unleashed with this virus, and I'm sure it was brought about by humans. This virus did not exist before a certain point of time. It is a manifestation of evil and the destructive power of our species. HIV was not here before. It was manufactured or unleashed by some human intervention. It wasn't just here and lying dormant, and then all of a sudden it came into being. It doesn't make any sense to any thinking person. I don't know who propagated this. I don't even want to speculate on that. I think that's counterproductive. Maybe at some point in history, we will know where it came from. That is the reason in terms of history, why so many people are trying to be born now. And so many people are trying to come in and be on the planet. Because the opportunity here is going to be very poor in terms of incarnation opportunities for a while. There aren't going to be as many opportunities. You should see the souls just lined up to get in. They're stacked up 10 deep around everybody, just waiting and wanting to come in. But unfortunately, many of these people will only be able to taste life They won't be able to find fulfillment because they won't live long enough. He said, I was really sabotaged. I'm glad I got to do as much work as I did. I'm glad I started work as a child and didn't put it off like you did. You're doing your work now. The first 30 years of your life, you weren't doing your work. He said, I didn't have 30 years to waste. In that sense, I'm happy I did it early. There's nothing like life, as you know. There's no compensation for the experience here. There are many wonderful things, and being able to mentally create my mood here is quite wonderful. I can be quite happy and calm. I can feel great joy. Here I can make myself feel things quite intensely, more intensely than I could in physical, but there's no substitute for the tangible way we experience things in physical. I ask Keith, I say, I'm very interested in researching on the way we come in. I say, your symbols, Keith, are so powerful, and I'm not even that familiar with your work. Your symbols are so profound for what I'm trying to do. I asked, did you understand ascension when you did the man with the wings? Because to me, it's a symbol of what is just walking around inside of people. It's the Christ in us, the good we're capable of. How did you understand that when you made that symbol? Keith answers, I met good people. I met taxi drivers and policemen and doormen who were angels, who I could see were embodied more of God and love than most people walking around. It really was a doorman that's inspired the angel figure. He was a large black doorman, and he clearly had wings to me. So I drew a man with wings. And the baby flying was really the potential that a baby has to, they can fly. They are so energized. Their potential is just so great. You just can't see a baby without seeing all the potential they have. It really didn't have to do with the baby coming into life as much as it had to do with the potential of the baby once it was in life, that they could just take off and fly. We had our wings clipped by life, and they certainly will be clipped by the time children have been consciously focused on everything we have in life. But the wings were more the potential of the baby. And the dog men are very clearly the streetwise, the aggressive street male that barks a lot, that bristles a lot, that takes a stand as a dog takes a stand. And also the relation of men and women, the dance they do fascinates me. I could not ever get quite enough of that put down. Of course, it is man to man too, but in our culture, I had to focus more on that male to female phenomena in terms of relationship. I would have liked to express man-to-man love, but there were enough aspects of man-to-woman love, everything from the fighting to the bonding to the sexual attraction. A lot of my work was just the birth, marriage, and death aspects of life. So I asked, well, where did you get the porpoise in the man? That is just so provocative. And he said that came from a marine show, a SeaWorld type of place. The porpoises seemed like performing humans to me. And they were into their performance. They understood what they were doing was entertainment. That was such an interesting crossover of a species in terms of entertaining. And no, it didn't have any mystical meaning in terms of species intent. If it did, I wasn't conscious of it. It was simply that those porpoises reminded me so much of people. I could see people doing the same thing. If my work had meaning to other people, what they brought into it, then it succeeded as art. Because you bring to something what you understand, what you see. You're seeing something completely different in the imagery of my work. Some people would see the porpoises right away as circus. And that's what's wonderful about a very simple symbol. Many different people can interpret it and think about it. It makes them think about what they associate with the symbol. That's why symbols are so much more interesting than photographs to me. In a photo, you're trying to see what the photograph says. In a symbol, you're only seeing what you think about it. You're not concerned about what the symbol says. You're only concerned about how you read the symbols. That's why symbols are so powerful. I asked Keith, did you ever meet Joe Campbell? He said, I was aware of his work. I did get to hear him in lecture once. I couldn't get close to him. I said, you and Joe would have had a lot to talk about. You should look him up here. Keith said, it's funny, I never thought of myself as an academic type, even though I did go to school right in the city. It seems like NYU. I'm getting the sense that he studied political science and sociology. You can see that in what topics interested him. He said, all through college, I did my own work. It wasn't as if college distracted me too much. I asked him about his family. I see one brother. They lived a very conventional life in the suburbs of New York. He said, I'm from the boroughs. My family didn't discourage me or encourage me, and they liked me as a person. They just didn't understand what I was doing. Few parents understand what their children as artists do. So we had relationship. It wasn't as if it was strained, but I had my own life. It wasn't as if I was incredibly involved with being home and with family. I felt I was supposed to narrow my focus. I felt I was here for all people more than just a few. And if I had had children, I would have wanted to have been very focused on them. And I knew it wasn't going to be possible with the work I had to do for a long time. And by then, I probably would have been too old. I think this was in reference because I believe his brother did marry and had children. I say, Keith, one of the things that coming into life that I want to explore is why people come in at specific historical times. Even in terms of yourself, why did you choose entry at this particular time in our technology? Keith and I come from very different physical backgrounds, even though we're both Americans. He jokes, he said, what a difference 5 hours in a car can make from there to here. He continues, I didn't go much into the country. It was pretty alien to me. I enjoyed meeting people. When you get to know people, you get to assess what in human terms is there. So I'm asking, what is he going to do now? And he said, I'm going to rest and get over that time of being so sick. Keith feels that the virus had mutated to a more deadly strain in New York City because the virus had the opportunity to evolve. He laughs. He said, your lifestyle would weaken some people's immune system. He's talking about the isolation. But everybody is so different. And the whole point is to keep people alive. Keith says, I never got into the political issues of gay rights. I mean, I would do what I could for that group, but I never got into the anger or the militancy because I just didn't have time. I was focusing on doing constructive work. I couldn't be preoccupied with what was wrong. There was plenty wrong, but I couldn't spend time getting involved in that. As you yourself know, you can't take time from your work to do the things that are superfluous. I thank Keith. And I say, I'd really like to talk to you again as you assimilate. I'm glad you're functioning so well out of body, and we hug each other. I say, have a good trip back because he's going back to the city. That's the end of the meditation. But there is a retrospective on Keith's art in Brattleboro, Vermont right now. And that's what kind of inspired me to look back at this meditation and share it with you. So thanks for coming. And until I see you again, please be well and please be blessed.